Good to see you. Politically, this is a nightmare. Yesterday, we heard the Biden administration talking about banning all Russian oil imports. That's going to have a big effect on the US, won't it?
Not a real big effect. We only import about 8 to 10% of our needs from Russia, and it's about $75 or $85 million a day that we're sending to Russia, which is why we're spending such close time looking at it. We're effectively funding the war effort, as are the Europeans, by buying Russian oil and natural gas. So it's going to be a very difficult time here. The president had the chance in his State of the Union last week to explain to people why oil prices, why gasoline prices might be going higher. Keep in mind, while the average is $4, I have friends paying $7 a gallon in California now, which, if I do the math, is about $1.75 per liter, and that's U.S., not Australian. So there are some parts of this country that are outrageously expensive right now, and it's not going to get any better anytime soon.
No, it's not, because this war looks to be long and protracted, even though we're just 2 weeks in. So how does this affect Biden domestically, do you think?
Yeah, I think he's missed an opportunity, Laura. He had a chance in the State of the Union speech last week, which is the biggest speech that any president gives. Most of the country watches it in one way or another. That's very rare in this day and age. And he had a chance, I think, to change our energy policy. We were a net energy exporter under the Trump administration. We were looking at that time to expand our liquefied natural gas sales into Europe. And then the Biden administration undid a lot of that in the early days of its administration. So we've missed an opportunity, we think, to sort of take advantage of this, which not only would help us economically, it would help the Europeans economically, and also kneecap the Russians. So it was one of those things that energy diplomacy gave us an opportunity that I think Biden missed out on. Even the Greens in Germany now, the Green Party in Germany, I believe the former Green Party leader or the Green Party leader is now the energy minister, talking about changing their domestic policies because of the extenuating circumstances in Ukraine. We should be doing the same, and I think the president is missing the boat on that one.
Yeah, so is Biden caught between the politics of climate change and the politics of energy security, which is now very clear that it's national security?
It is, and that's exactly where he is. And there was, again, some discussion that he might sort of distance himself from the extreme left wing of his party. If he'd gone on the stage last week and said he was going to temporarily change our policy in order to allow more domestic production, he would have received a bipartisan approval. Certainly the Republicans would have approved of it, but most Democrats would as well. The far left in this party is not nearly as it's ascendant in terms of its energy levels, but it's not dominant in terms of its numbers. And I think Biden had an opportunity to sort of carve out the middle. So, yeah, we're still going back and forth and stuck in that exact dilemma that you mentioned. Unfortunately, it looks like Biden is siding with the climate change policies. Again, that's bad foreign policy for at least, the next several months.
Yeah, it's interesting to see where all of this goes. In the meantime, Putin has not pulled back. It's been 12 days. He hasn't got as far as many analysts suggested he might with his superior defence force over Ukraine. The US a couple of days ago was talking about supplying jets, aircraft to Poland, so Poland could then supply the Ukraine. Where's that ended up? And is there a concern in the establishment that that might be provocative to Russia?
There is. Of course, the thing that the Ukrainians are asking for more than anything, and they ask for it every single day, is a no-fly zone over Ukraine, which would effectively be a declaration of war, right? Because it would mean that a U.S. plane or a NATO plane would have to shoot down a Russian plane. So that would be an act of war. So what the Ukrainians are asking us to do first and foremost is essentially go to war against Russia. And I simply don't see that happening. There's no stomach for that here. We are completely distressed and distraught over what the Russians are doing to Ukraine, but I don't think anyone is itching, other than some fringe members of my party, Lindsey Graham, for example, itching to go to war with the Russians. The idea of us backfilling jets, so we would sell F-16s to the Poles, and the Poles would give their Russian-made jets to the Ukrainians. Ukrainians don't know how to fly the F-16s. I don't think they'll have those jets, so they need those Russian-made equipment. That's an interesting concept. You could see the argument that the Russians would make the case that that's effectively the same thing as extending the war into Poland. So it's going to be fraught with all sorts of difficulties, but it's going to get difficult. I'd like to see us rank up the sanctions. We talked about what we've done. We still have not sanctioned Russia's largest bank. We've not sanctioned all of Gazprom. There's a lot of things that we haven't done. Many European countries have asked for exemptions from the sanctions. I believe the Italians asked for exemptions for luxury goods, et cetera. So there's more things we could do on sanctions first to make life miserable before we start shooting down planes belonging to the Russians.
Yeah, and look, the sanctions are starting to ramp up. We're seeing that as the Western world moves together. Where does this all end up, I guess? What are the most severe sanctions as you see them? You mentioned Russian banks. Can you fully isolate Russia, which is obviously what we're trying to do, when China is so tacit in its approval?
No, we go right back to where you were a few moments ago, which is energy diplomacy. It is really, really difficult because the sanctions you'd like to put on would be to say you can't send any money to Gazprom, right? But that would effectively kill the German economy. They're still heavily reliant on Russian oil and gas. Nord Stream 2 has that suffix on it because Nord Stream 1 already exists and is functioning today. Germany cannot function without Russian oil, and that's really hamstringing both their foreign policy and their international affairs. It's hard to sort of threaten to go to war with somebody when they're providing you with all of your oil and natural gas. So it really is a catch-22. It's a difficult way out for the Germans, and something that the previous administration in the U.S. had been warning about for 4 years, was that unless you got off of Russian oil and natural gas, you could end up in a real conundrum, which is where the Europeans are. So you ask where it ends. I think it ends badly for the Russians, but when is going to be is still a fair question, and who else they're going to drag down with them. Eastern Europe, Western Europe, the world economy remains to be seen. It's a very, very fluid situation.
Yeah, you're right. It's a conundrum. It's quickly becoming a quagmire as well. Mick Mulvaney, always great to talk to you. We'll speak soon.
Thanks, Laura.